Hi, thanks for tuning in today to Front Porch Conversations here at Advent Christian Village. We're on the front porch at the Copeland Community Center enjoying this beautiful sunny morning and listening to the crickets, and I think I hear some birds as well. Now I'd like to introduce you to our guests today who are here for our Front Porch Conversations, Donald and Penny Wrigley. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you
for having us.
And I know that you're very newly moved to the village.
Yes.
But not new knowing about the village. But we'll get to that.
That is correct.
And where do you live?
We are living in Park of the Pines and enjoying being there with all of the people.
And tell our viewers whose home you live in.
We are living in the home that Elaine Van Amberg had lived in when she was here.
Well, as a lot of us know that, it's not your home until you've lived there for a while. People refer to it
as who had it before.
Right? So you probably will be no different, but people will recognize where you live from knowing that.
Yes.
How about telling us, Penny, starting with you, where you were born and grew up?
I was born in Sherbrooke, Quebec, Canada, and grew up about 30 miles from there and about 90 miles from Montreal, which people recognize that usually. And I was also just a few miles across the United States-Canadian line. And so I had a lot of chance to go to the States during that growing up period. And went to school there and had most of my family there. So,
Donald?
It would take quite a while. I'm a preacher's child, but I grew up, my roots in New England, and born in Massachusetts. I lived there, Rhode Island, and went to college in Lenox, Massachusetts. So my mom's roots are Connecticut, my dad's roots are Maine. So New England's the easiest answer to give to that question.
Or we would take the whole interview, right?
This is true. We could go there if you'd like.
Penny, do you have siblings?
yes, I have two sisters, Heather and Diane, and they both live in Victoria, British Columbia. So we don't get to see each other but once every maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years. So.
What are some of your fondest memories of growing up?
Going to the beach, I think, and going to Santa's Village. There was a place called Santa's Village in New Hampshire that we would go to, and that was a neat place to go. And just being with family. I have a lot of cousins, and so we spend a lot of time with family.
Okay, help me with my geography. By going to the beach, where did you go?
We would go to like Old Orchard Beach.
Which is?
In Maine.
Southern Maine.
Southern Maine, yeah.
Okay, so actually on the coast.
Yes, on the coast.
I was trying to figure out if you were close enough to our Great Lake that would be the beach.
No.
Geography is not my specialty. But I do like to travel.
Yeah, we do too. Yeah.
What about you, Donald?
There are many memories. Some of my most enjoyable time as a child would have been spent in the Pacific Northwest. We lived in Bellingham, Washington for 5 or 6 years. I'd have to do the math, but we went to the mountains. We went to the beaches. Mom and Dad did everything they could while we were in an area to see as much of it as we could in an economical fashion. So going up in the mountains and spending time on the beaches, which are not like the beaches that most people on the East Coast think of. Wasn't sand, it was rocks and driftwood that you were dealing with, which was fun when you're young.
Maybe treacherous now.
It would be very treacherous now, yes.
Where did the two of you meet?
We met at Berkshire Christian College, and he interrupted a conversation I was having with someone and went downhill from there.
Literally went downhill. My answer to that question is she pushed me down the hill in front of the student lounge. Those familiar with the geography of Berkshire. And my recollection of it is that it was totally unprovoked. She has a different slant on that part of it. So.
And I bet that's been debated a lot through the years.
It has.
It has.
Well, that's what keeps those stories fun.
Yeah.
And so that's where you met.
Yes.
And Donald, you were there pursuing a degree in divinity.
Yes, I was studying to be a pastor, and her major was Christian education, if I remember right. And I graduated. She went 2.5 years and got her certificate, 2-year certificate, and then she returned home to make some money, and then we were married in January of my senior year.
And for our viewers, did both of you grow up as in the Advent Christian Church? I know you did, Donald. Did you?
I grew up my mother was Advent Christian and my father was Episcopalian, so I grew up in 2 churches. But my best friend as a teenager was from the Advent Christian Church, and that was how I happened to go to Berkshire. She was going. And so.
Seemed like it was already ordained that you would meet Donald there and push him down the hill.
I guess.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it was actually at the BB camp where he, well, I guess you didn't actually propose to me at the camp, but you were
No, I
that
was
weekend.
there, yeah, as was Dad.
Yeah. So.
Donald, I didn't ask about your siblings.
I have one sister, and she lives here at the village. She's the office manager of the village church, Susan Darby. And I will say only nice things about her on tape.
I understand how siblings are. I don't have any, but I know a lot of people who do. And sometimes it's just a way of teasing, but in other times it's not so much. But anyway, tell us about your wedding. Anything remarkable stories that you'd want to share?
It was a winter wedding, and it was in Canada, of course. And I'm trying to think. Anything?
Do you want to tell my side of the story, or do you?
Oh well, yeah. I guess
want
I
me
could
to?
tell that. He came over to my home that morning of the wedding and said, "Do you have the tuxedo pants?" And lo and behold, I did not have them. He hadn't brought them.
They were 4 to 6 hours away. And
So he got to wear his dad's suit to the wedding.
suit pants.
Yeah. So that was probably the exciting part of that day. But
Well, they told us afterwards that they were all holding their breath
yes.
when you were
My
serving
veil.
tea, and her veil passed right through an open flame of a candle.
yeah, I did that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we've been surviving a lot of little things. Yeah.
And after marriage, where did you live?
We lived at Berkshire for
Oh, that-
6 months, and then we went to New Brunswick, Canada, and lived there for 4 years, 3 to 4 years. And from there we went to Texas, then to North Carolina, then to Virginia, then back to North Carolina, and now here in Florida.
And you were living in North Carolina when you moved here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And along the way, you had children.
Yes, we have 2 boys, Stephen and David, and they both served in the military, and Stephen now lives in Texas with his wife and 2 children, and David lives in Virginia with his wife and 3 children. So, yeah, blessed.
Donald, what was the first church you were called to?
First church was Middle Simons, New Brunswick, which is just to cross the line from the churches that are up in northern Maine, in Presque Isle and Ashland area. It was right on the banks of the St. John River, which was wider than this one, but it's not my first time living beside rivers that can flood.
And not to be confused with the St. John's River here in Florida. So it is only St. John?
Yeah, that's true. I'd forgotten about that. The claim to fame of that first area was the longest covered bridge in the world is in the closest town to where the church is, in Hartland, New Brunswick, and it was just a little bit wider than this front porch is, and it was 2-laned. Technically, that you were supposed to wait till the other people came across. I used to go across with a gentleman from our church, and in more times than I care to remember, he'd go through when someone was coming at you. So we survived.
And from there, where was your next assignment?
We went from from the rural area of New Brunswick, Canada, to a suburb of Dallas, Texas, the Southlake, Texas area, Pleasant Hill Advent Christian Church, and we were there for about 3 years, and it was a great experience, but it was true cultural shock. We were raising 2 infant children at that point, and it was quite interesting.
Penny, during the time your children were growing up, did you work outside the home?
No, until they were in high school, I babysat full time in my home.
So you were working.
Yeah, I was working, and it was an interesting experience for the most part. We ended up, the last 2 children that I kept in our home became like other children to us. They were other sons. So I actually had 4 sons, so to speak, and they still consider us family to this day. So it was good.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And then I went out into the work world.
And what did you do?
I started out at done medical supply and worked there for a couple of years, and then I went to International Paper and started working there in the office, and I stayed there for 20.5 years. So
Changed names while you were there. But
yes, it did change names while I was there, but I stayed at the same facility. So.
Donald, you have another relative, at least one more that lives here. So why don't you tell our viewers who that might be?
I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but
I
diagonally across the street.
I know I was thinking of somebody who has already been on one of the Front Porch Conversations that shares part of your name.
Okay, yes, my father. In fact, some people may look at this and say, this looks awful familiar. I've been accused of being twins on more than one occasion. Yes, my dad is here. My sister's here with all of her families. And I have a great aunt, Aunt Lillian Schumann, who actually lives diagonally across the street from us in Park of the Pine. But yeah, Dad's been a resident here for 20 years?
No,
Yes?
13 or 14 anyway.
At least 14, because that's how long I've been here.
Yeah, long time.
Well, you told me a story the other day about how not to confuse the two of you.
Oh, okay.
And actually yesterday we were doing an interview with the Russells.
All right.
And he told me the same story, so it must be true.
He told you that story?
Yes, he did. So tell our viewers.
Okay, I'm
Because
just trying.
He didn't tell
I'll
about
have
the
to
interview.
talk to him. Dad and I both are named Donald. His middle initial is E, and my middle initial is B. And it was done on purpose. I am not a junior, and I've been known to get defensive about that. I'm not so much anymore. But we were, of course, we spent time. We were both pastoring in the Advent Christian denomination, which is not huge. And we were in the same geographical area. I was in Texas and he was in New Mexico. And we were at an event that involved both of us and in another location from either one of our churches. And somebody at this event was confused and says, well, how do you tell them apart? Which one's which? Well, there was another lady at this event we were at, and she was, pardon? She carried a lot of authority. That's probably a polite way of saying it. And she stood up and says, well, I can tell you how to tell the difference. And she looked at us both and said, he, pointing at my dad, is Donald E. Wrigley. The E stands for elder. Then she pointed at me and said, he is Donald B. Wrigley, and the B stands for boy. And that's almost exactly how she said it. And so it works. He's the elder, I'm the boy. No matter how old I get, I'm still his boy. So that's an easy way. But there have been some confusions through the years with the denomination, nothing serious. And I guess as long as the finance office keeps us straight here at the village, all will go well.
I'm sure they will.
So far they have.
What caused you to think about moving to the village?
We have had family here at the Advent Christian Village continually since the early 80s. So it would take too long to go through the list, but multiple family members have been here and are here. And so we have been coming in and out of the village since the early 80s. More frequently since Mom and Dad moved, and much more frequently in the last few years as Mom's health declined and she passed away a couple of years ago. But we had always said that when we retired that this is where we were going to move. So it was kind of a natural thing. I was a fan of the Advent Christian Village before we moved here. So I don't know how far afield you want me to go with that.
It's good to be with family. We haven't, being in the pastorate, you don't live in your family very often, and so this made an option for us.
And you moved here during quarantine time, so you haven't been out doing a lot or visiting a lot of people.
That's for sure. Yeah.
And I know that's a little bit of an adjustment, but probably it's not as hard as somebody who had not ever lived here or known much about the village before moving here.
I would think it would be very difficult for somebody who had nothing to go by except a brochure or whatever someone had told them. Yeah, that would have been difficult. So we are fortunate. We are surviving and looking forward to things opening up. We both are interested in volunteering in some capacity, unknown at this point exactly what, but we're looking forward to getting involved with the church in whatever way we can, and so we're just kind of mostly patiently biding our time, mostly patiently.
When you're not just biding your time other than volunteering, what do you like to do?
Reading. For me, reading, knitting, walking. I have done some writing, not a lot, but a little bit for programs involved in the church in the past. And that's probably about what I do.
I enjoy reading, and I watch way too much TV than I need to, but I look forward to being able to either discover whether there are fish in that river that can be caught or fish at the coast that can be caught. I enjoy throwing fishing lines into water. To be called a fisherman, I think you really have to have some talent and catch a lot of fish. And I don't think I deserve that title, but I do enjoy the process. We like to travel. Through the years, we've had the opportunity to travel to many parts of the country. So distance traveling is not an issue when we can. Obviously, I like to eat. That's another favorite pastime. So,
do you have trips that you're wanting to take already kind of planned out? Or?
Well, we probably need to return to North Carolina because we kind of snuck out, so to speak, figuratively speaking, in the middle of the night. We couldn't really say goodbye to anybody and need to get back to see some friends there. As I said, we have a son in the Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area that we didn't get a chance to see before we came down here, and then a son in East Texas near Texarkana that we need to get out to see. So we have some friends in Wilmington, North Carolina that there are a couple of trips eventually that we'd like to take with them. And don't know if they're going to pan out or not. Nothing soon anyways.
Would you have other things on your bucket list that don't involve travel?
I would think most of our bucket list involves travel to some degree.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Or getting involved somehow around here.
Yeah.
Well, don't worry. When things open up, there will be lots to do.
Yes, I'm sure.
Donald, you also spent some time not as a pastor.
Okay.
And would you share with us about that?
All right. I left pastoral ministry in the end of 1994, and for about 6 years I tried my hand at several different things, most of them either retail or fast food oriented. Then in January 2nd, 2000, I began employment with BB&T, which is a bank that at the time was based in North Carolina and is now one of the larger banks in the East. And I began work with them as a teller in January of 2000, and I retired as a teller June 30th, 2018. After 18 and a half years as a teller. I enjoyed that, and most of that time I've spent in drive-through. And it's funny, of course, we lived in the same town where I was the bank teller and had been, and people would see me around town, and I usually have a hat on. Given this head, I normally have a hat on if I'm outside, and people would see me and they'd look at me strange. I'd see that, like, I know you from somewhere. I finally got to the point I just would take my hat off and say, oh, the drive-through teller at BB&T. So, that was, that happened many, many times. So I enjoyed that. It was customer service oriented. So I was helping people, and it was never a dull moment. Just about anything could happen, and most of them did in the course of the 18 years. So BB&T was and remains a good company to work for, though I did retire just before they decided to merge with SunTrust and become another organization called Truist. So I'm glad I don't have to worry about any of that administrative mess.
And so you have a real empathy when you drive through the bank teller here.
I do. I know what they're going through, and I don't. It was interesting. I was looking having to go. I haven't been inside the bank here yet, and I looked at. Lady had a program running on her computer that I couldn't see the program. I couldn't see words, so there was no information being shared, but it was a program that looked very familiar. I think they were using the same base product that we did, but I didn't draw that to our attention. I do have empathy for drive-through tellers.
Well, what advice would you give a young person today, each of you?
Advice. As far as marriage advice, that never was my strong point as a pastor, but my advice was always go to bed on Saturday night and planning on being in church on Sunday morning. I ran into so many people who said, well, if I wake up in time, or if nothing else comes up, but if you go to bed thinking time to go to church, you will. And I'm a strong believer in that finances should be joined together as opposed to I understand, as a bank teller, I understand the reasons for separating them, but it's a union, and tried to, the best advice is men need to learn 2 words.
And those 2 are?
Yes, dear.
Penny, what about you, advice for a young person?
Put the Lord in your life. Have the Lord in your life first place. And I think that's probably the number one thing that they need. And so many today don't realize that without the Lord, they have nothing.
Wonderful advice from both of you. Thank you. I think one thing would be interesting to share is that I think you all were the last people to move to the village before the quarantine.
I believe we
So
snuck in under the wire.
So that's kind of, you're having to leave in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Would that explain that?
Kind of.
Well, there's more to this story, but we sold our home in less than 48 hours. And the kicker for that was he didn't want to move in the middle of April, the end of April, in May. He wanted to close on the 27th of March. So we had that short a period of time to finish packing and get out. So we were involved with a care group that wanted to have a celebration party, and they determined we can't do this. We had been involved with the same church for about 18 plus years, or 20 years. And we never technically got a chance to say goodbye, or at least be, hey, they're leaving, And so.
Yeah, because they closed the stay-at-home order hit before we put it out.
When we moved in, we stopped at the Florida Welcome Center, just used restroom and changed drivers. And I believe this is broad daylight, and there were less than 20 cars in I-95 Welcome Center coming into Florida. I don't think you could ever say that.
Probably not.
But it was a strange feeling.
Well, I think it was just an interesting point to conclude our talk with today. It'll give some perspective to people who might be watching this in the future.
Okay.
But thank you all so much. It's been pleasant here with you on the porch this morning.
It
Well,
has
thank
been.
you for having us.
Yes.
And we look forward to seeing you volunteering all over the place when things change. Thanks so much for tuning in, and look forward to, I hope you'll be joining us on other Front Porch Conversations.